Hey everyone, so it sounds like you're ready to upgrade your TV setup and you're thinking Sony.
That's great. More specifically, you're interested in the A80L, the X93L, and the Bravia 8.
Now those are some solid choices, especially if you're looking for a premium viewing experience. But I know all the tech specs can get kind of confusing, so we're going to break it all down for you.
We're going to compare these three models side by side, talk about their strengths and weaknesses, and hopefully by the end of this, you'll know exactly which Sony TV is the perfect fit for your needs.
And you know what's really interesting is that these three TVs actually represent the biggest debate in TV land right now. OLED versus Mini LED.
It's a battle of the technologies, and both sides have some serious advantages.
Okay, so let's get right to it. What is the difference between OLED and Mini LED?
All right, so picture this OLED is like a sky full of fireflies. Each little light can turn on and off independently, and that's exactly how OLED TVs work. They have millions of tiny, self-emitting pixels. That means each pixel creates its own light, which gives you perfect black levels and incredible contrast. You're not going to get that with any other technology.
Wow, that sounds impressive.
Yeah.
So if you're the kind of person who loves watching movies with the lights off, OLED is going to give you that wow factor.
Absolutely. Especially for things like space scenes or movies with lots of dark scenes, OLED really shines because those blacks are going to be truly black, not just like a really dark gray.
Okay, so OLED sounds pretty amazing.
Mm.
But what about Mini LED? How does that work?
Mini LED is a different approach. Instead of individual pixels, it uses a backlight with thousands of tiny LEDs grouped into what we call dimming zones.
So it's kind of like having a bunch of mini spotlights behind the screen.
Exactly. And by controlling those dimming zones, the TV can create a much brighter picture than OLED, which is great if you watch TV in a room with a lot of sunlight.
So if your living room's got those big windows and you're always battling glare, Mini LED could be the way to go.
Right, because those mini LEDs can pump out some serious brightness. Now, the thing about mini LED is that because it uses those dimming zones, it's not quite as precise as OLED. You might see something called blooming.
Blooming? That sounds kind of ominous. What is that?
It's basically a halo effect that you sometimes see around bright objects when they're on a dark background.
Okay. Can you give me an example?
Sure, imagine you're watching a movie at night with subtitles on. You might notice a slight glow around the white text. That's blooming. It's because the dimming zones are trying to brighten up those subtitles, but they can't be as precise as those individual pixels in an OLED TV.
I see. So it sounds like blooming could be an issue if you're watching a lot of movies in a dark room where those bright objects on a black background really stand out.
Yeah, that's something to keep in mind. But it's worth noting that Sony has done a really good job of minimizing blooming in their latest mini LED TVs.
Okay, good to know. Now, you mentioned earlier that two of the TVs we're looking at, the A80L and the Bravia 8, are both OLED TVs.
Right, but they don't perform exactly the same, even though they both have those tiny fireflies we were talking about.
Why is that?
Well, the Bravia 8 actually has a newer, more powerful processor than the AEL, and that processor allows it to create an even brighter picture.
So how much brighter are we talking about?
It's about a 10% increase in brightness, which might not sound like a lot, but it can make a noticeable difference, especially when you're watching HDR content.
Hold on, HDR.
Oh.
We're throwing around a lot of acronyms here. Can you explain what HDR is?
Of course, HDR stands for High Dynamic Range. And basically, it expands the range of colors and light that the TV can display, so you get a more realistic and immersive picture. It's like the difference between looking at a regular photo and a high-definition one.
Okay, so HDR is basically a way to make the picture look even more amazing, more lifelike, more vibrant.
Exactly. And the Bravia 8, with that brighter OLED panel, can really take advantage of HDR content. So that's something to keep in mind, especially if you're someone who wants the most out of their viewing experience.
Gotcha. So we've talked about picture quality. We've talked about OLED versus Mini LED. We've even touched on HDR. But a great TV is more than just a pretty picture, right?
Absolutely. What about those smart features? You know, the stuff that makes your TV feel like a giant smartphone?
Right, like streaming apps and voice control and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So which one of these Sony TVs has the best smart features?
Well, two of them, the A80L and the X93L, they actually use Google TV as their operating system.
Google TV. That's the one that's super popular, right?
Yeah, it's got a really familiar interface, tons of apps. You can stream pretty much anything you can think of. Plus, you get voice control, so you can just tell your TV what you want to watch.
So it's like having a built-in streaming box, but even better because it's all integrated into the TV.
Exactly. And it's really easy to use, even if you're not super tech savvy.
Okay, so the A80L and the X93L both have Google TV. What about the Bravia 8? What's it running on?
The Bravia 8 actually uses Sony's own operating system.
Oh, so is that like a bad thing?
Not necessarily. It's got all the basic functions you'd expect, like streaming apps and settings controls. But the app selection might be a bit more limited compared to Google TV, and it might not be as intuitive for those who are already familiar with Google's ecosystem.
I see. So if you're someone who loves having the latest and greatest apps, or if you're already deeply ingrained in the Google world, the A80L or X93L with their Google TV integration might be a better fit.
It just depends on your priorities.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about something that's important to a lot of viewers, especially those who love action movies and immersive gaming, sound quality.
Right, because who wants to watch an epic space battle with tinny weak sound?
Exactly. All three of these TVs have built-in speakers that are decent for everyday viewing. They get plenty loud, deliver clear dialogue, and even offer a bit of bass.
That's good, because I know some TVs, especially the really thin ones, their sound can be kind of underwhelming.
Right, and they all support Dolby Atmos, which is a fantastic feature for creating a more immersive sound experience.
Dolby Atmos, that's another one of those fancy acronyms. What is that exactly?
Dolby Atmos is a surround sound technology that adds a height dimension to the audio. Instead of sound just coming from left, right, and center, it can also come from above you, creating a more realistic and three-dimensional soundscape. Think of a helicopter flying overhead with Dolby Atmos. It'll sound like it's actually above you in the room.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So even though none of these TVs come with a full surround sound system, Dolby Atmos helps create a more immersive audio experience.
Exactly. But even though they all support Dolby Atmos, they do have some differences in their sound capabilities.
Yeah.
The A80L and the Bravia 8 use a unique technology called Acoustic Surface Audio Plus.
Acoustic Surface Audio Plus. Now that sounds intriguing. What makes it different from a regular TV speaker?
This is where it gets really cool. With Acoustic Surface Audio Plus, the entire TV screen vibrates to create the sound. It's like the sound is coming directly from the images on the screen.
Wow, so if you're watching a scene with a character talking, it sounds like the voice is actually coming from their mouth on the screen.
That's the idea. It adds another layer of realism and immersion to the viewing experience. It's pretty amazing.
That's really cool. Now, how does the X93L's sound compare?
The X93L takes a more traditional approach, with its speakers focused on delivering powerful bass. It's a great choice for action movies and anything with those heart-pounding explosions.
So if you're a bass enthusiast, or if you just want a TV that can really rumble during those action-packed scenes, the X93L might be the one for you.
Right. So we've covered a lot of ground already. Picture quality, smart features, sound technology. It's clear each of these TVs brings something unique to the table.
Yeah, they all sound pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing there are some trade-offs to consider.
You're absolutely right. Choosing the perfect TV isn't just about ticking off a list of features. It's about finding the right balance for your individual needs and preferences. And that's what we're going to help you do in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, so stay tuned, because we're about to break down the pros and cons of each model even further, helping you narrow down your choices and get closer to finding your perfect TV match.
Okay, so we've covered all those fancy features. But what does it all mean for, your actual viewing experience?
Yeah, let's talk about how these TVs actually perform in real life.
So let's start with the Bravia 8. Remember, this is the one with that brighter OLED screen.
Yeah, the one that can really combat glare.
Exactly. So if you've got a brightly lit living room, you're going to appreciate that extra brightness.
Yeah, no more squinting at the screen or having to draw the curtains every time you watch TV.
And we can't forget about that Acoustic Surface Audio Plus technology. I mean, having the sound come directly from the screen itself, that's pretty wild.
It really is. I'm curious, though. Does it sound as good as a regular speaker setup?
Well, it depends what you're looking for. Acoustic Surface Audio Plus is definitely impressive for a built-in system. You get clear dialogue, decent bass, and it can get surprisingly loud.
But if I'm a real audiophile.
Then you might want to consider adding a soundbar or a surround sound system.
Right, because a dedicated audio setup is always going to give you that extra oomph.
But for everyday viewing, Acoustic Surface Audio Plus is more than enough.
Okay. What about the A80L? What are its strengths?
The A80L, it's all about that classic OLED experience, those perfect black levels, that incredible contrast. It's really stunning, especially in a dark room.
Like if you've got a dedicated home theater.
Exactly. The A80L is going to make those movies and TV shows really come to life.
And it's got Google TV, right?
Yep. So you've got all those smart features and streaming apps built right in.
Okay, now let's talk about the X93L, the mini LED contender.
The X93L, it's bright, really bright, and it's a beast when it comes to HDR
I'm
performance.
still not entirely sure what HDR is all about. Can you remind me?
Sure, HDR stands for High Dynamic Range, and it's basically a way to expand the range of colors and brightness that the TV can display.
So it's like those photos that just pop off the screen?
Exactly. You get more detail, more depth, more realism. And the X93L, with its mini LED backlight, can really take advantage of HDR content.
But what about blooming? We talked about that earlier. Is it a problem with the X93L?
It can be, but Sony has done a really good job of minimizing blooming in their latest models, so it's less of an issue than it used to be.
So it's not a deal breaker.
Probably not, especially if you watch TV in a well-lit room. And remember, the X93L's brightness is a major advantage. If you've got a lot of natural light coming into your living room, this TV can handle it.
Okay, so we've talked about picture quality, HDR, blooming. Now let's get back to those smart features. We know the A80L and X93L have Google TV. What about the Bravia 8?
The Bravia 8, it uses Sony's own operating system. It's fine, it's functional, but it's not as intuitive as Google TV.
So if I'm a big streamer.
You might be happier with the A80L or X93L.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Now what about gaming? Which one of these TVs is best for gamers?
Well, the X93L is definitely the gamer's choice. It's got all the bells and whistles, low input lag, variable refresh rate, auto low latency mode, you name it.
Can you break that down for me? I'm not a gamer.
Sure. Basically, all those features are designed to make your gaming experience as smooth and responsive as possible. You won't have to deal with lag or screen tearing.
So the X93L is the one to get if you're serious about gaming.
Absolutely. But the A80L and Bravia 8 are still decent for casual gamers.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. Picture quality, smart features, sound, gaming. It's clear that each of these TVs has its own strengths and weaknesses.
Right. And choosing the perfect TV, it's not just about ticking off a list of features. It's about finding the right balance for your individual needs and preferences.
Exactly. So how do we do that?
Well, that's what we're going to talk about in the final part of our deep dive.
Stay tuned, because we're about to break down the pros and cons of each model even further, helping you narrow down your choices and make the best decision for your home entertainment setup. All right, so we've talked about all the cool features and how these TVs perform, but now comes the hard part.
Choosing which one is right for you.
Yeah, they all sound pretty amazing.
They do. So let's quickly recap what makes each TV stand out. Starting with the Bravia 8, this is the one with that brighter OLED panel. So it's going to look great even in a brightly lit room.
And it's got that cool acoustic surface audio plus technology where the sound comes directly from the screen itself.
Right, which is pretty impressive for a built-in system.
Yeah, and it's probably the most budget-friendly option too.
Now the A80L, this is the one for those who crave that classic OLED experience. Perfect blacks, incredible contrast, especially in a dark room.
Perfect for movie night.
Exactly. And it comes with Google TV, so you've got all those streaming apps and smart features right there.
And finally, the X93L, our mini LED powerhouse.
The X93L, this one is all about brightness and HDR performance. Plus, it's got all those gaming features.
Low input lag, VRR, LLM, the works.
So, 3 great TVs, each with its own strengths. How do you choose?
Well, it all comes down to your individual needs and preferences.
Right, absolutely. Think about your viewing habits, where you watch TV, what kind of content you watch, and how important things like sound quality and gaming features are to you.
And remember, the best way to really decide is to see these TVs in person.
Go to your local electronics store, compare them side by side, and let your eyes and ears be the judge.
That's great advice. There's nothing like seeing those TVs in action to really get a feel for how they perform.
And don't be afraid to ask questions. The salespeople are there to help you.
Well, there you have it. Our deep dive into the world of Sony TVs. We hope this has helped you make a more informed decision.
Absolutely. Happy viewing, everyone.